He's on. Hello. Yeah. Skip, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, no. Good afternoon, everyone. It's morning in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm giving a lecture at the University of Arizona, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you with my friend Erwan on our final colloquium, but I'm here. I clawed my way out of bed just to be here to see Erwan do the divination. And Erwan, you need to get rid of some demons in Washington, D.C., so I want you to do your thing, okay? All right, everybody, I'm on. I'll ask a question. Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you. So we're so thrilled to have Erwan present his work at the final colloquium today. And he will be introduced by Yosvani Terry, that is in proxy. That is, I will deliver his words because yesterday he had some dentistry work done and he's a little uncomfortable. So Yosvani Terry, as you know, is a brilliant award-winning musician and composer, and he serves as senior lecturer and director of the jazz ensembles in the music department here at Harvard. A groundbreaking Cuban saxophonist, percussionist and composer, Terry's work is a convergence of Cuban roots music and jazz, and has, according to the New York Times, quote, helped redefine Latin jazz as a complex new idiom, unquote. A generous teacher as well, he teaches around the world and regularly returns to Cuba to give workshops and master classes. And this is his introduction to his friend and colleague, Erwan Dianteill. He says, today I have the pleasure of introducing Professor Erwan Dianteill, who joined us this semester coming from the Université Paris-Cité, where he serves as a distinguished professor of anthropology and conducts his research at the Center for Cultural Anthropology. At the heart of his scholarly contributions are three landmark ethnographic studies that together provide an unprecedented comparative view of African diaspora religious systems. His first major work, Gods and Signs, examines Santeria and its divination in Havana. Through meticulous fieldwork with Babalawas, Dianteill documented how the complex system of divination maintains its epistemological coherence while adapting to Cuba's unique cultural and political landscape. His analysis reveals how practitioners navigate religious authority, interpret the sacred Odu corpus, and maintain ritual efficacy in contemporary urban settings. This work is particularly significant for understanding how African knowledge systems transform yet persist across the Middle Passage, showing how writing and reading become a central part of Ifa practice in Cuba. In his second pivotal study, The Black Samaritan Woman, Dianteill turned his ethnographic lens to the Black spiritual churches in New Orleans. His research uncovers the fascinating synthesis of Protestant Christianity, Catholicism, and African-derived spiritual practices in these uniquely American religious institutions. Through careful participant observation and interviews, he showed how these churches provide both spiritual guidance and practical social support for African American communities. The work illuminates processes of religious innovation and adaptation in response to the specific historical conditions of the American South. His third contribution, L'Oracle et le Temple, has completed his comparative analysis in 2024 by examining Ifa divination in Porto Novo, Benin. This work not only documents contemporary West African divinatory practices, but also makes the groundbreaking connection between Ifa and Islamic, Arabic, and Latin geomancy traditions. By meticulously analyzing the structural similarities between these systems, he reveals historical connections that challenge conventional understandings of African intellectual history. His research suggests complex patterns of transmission along trans-Saharan trade routes, demonstrating how African divination systems engage with Islamic knowledge traditions while maintaining their distinctive cosmological frameworks. Collectively, these three major ethnographic works constitute one of the most comprehensive comparative studies of Afro-Atlantic religious systems. They reveal how African epistemologies adapt to different historical and cultural contexts while maintaining core philosophical and ritual elements. Professor Dianteill's remarkable body of work, which includes 10 authored or co-authored books and 16 edited collections, more than 100 scholarly publications, is a very important contribution to the understanding of religious transnationalism across the Black Atlantic world. Please welcome Erwan Dianteill. Excuse me, Professor Terry, do you have a few words to say? Two.
I just wanted to say that besides the incredible accomplishment of Professor Dianteill, I was fortunate enough to be invited by him to spend time with him in Benin, which it's just amazing to see how he transforms and blends with the locals and the people that he worked with, and how much he actually become a whole different person, not wearing the suits that you see him with, but actually inside, just like he just become a local. So I just wanted to share with you this little thing. So thank you so much, Dan.
I don't deserve that, so I just want really to thank you. Thank you, Professor Terry, for your constant support in this research on African religions, and of course the shared moments in the field in Benin, in Porto Novo, and everywhere. It was really wonderful. And your music work has been inspirational to me also, and I want to say it very loudly, publicly too. Many thanks to Dr. Krishna Lewis, whose care and thoughtful attention have made the Hutchins Center such a welcoming and intellectual, vibrant space for its fellows. I'm also deeply grateful to Dr. Abby Wolf for her relentless energy and dedication, which continuously drive the center's development and vitality. My heartfelt appreciation goes to Velma. I can't see her, but I know she's busy. To Velma Dupont, whose daily help and unfailing kindness, especially in saving me from being locked out of my office on more than one occasion, were absolutely indispensable. My deep gratitude goes to Professor Lupona, head of the African and African American Studies Department at Harvard University. His work has been very inspirational for me also for many, many years. And with profound admiration, it's not on the screen, but I really thank Professor Gates for his unwavering commitment for building the Hutchins Center into a world-renowned hub of academic excellence. And as many of you, I know it, I'm very proud to be part of it. Okay. This lecture, I want to move that. Look at that. This lecture presents a tripartite research project carried out at the Hutchins Center during spring 2025, and the auspices of Eshwelegbara, who's the god of African crossroads, thresholds, and semiotic interpretations. It explores the structural and symbolic convergences between Ifa divination in West Africa and its diasporas, but also geomantic divination as it developed in Christian Europe in the Middle Ages. This research aims to show not only the formal and semiotic continuities between these apparently very different traditions, which are actually connected, but also their shared cosmological ambition to mediate between human beings and the divine through interpretive systems based on graphic randomness, actually signs coming from non-human beings. Okay. So, to be clear, this research comprises three interlocking components. The first is the editorial preparation of the divinatory lectures of Aristide Falola, who was a master diviner in Porto Novo. Master Babalao, the equivalent being Bokono in Benin, Babalao in Nigeria, and Bokono in Porto Novo. His lectures were recorded and translated posthumously. The second fold is a comparative study of Ifa divination across Nigeria, Benin, and Cuba, incorporating both classical anthropological sources and contemporary field data. The third, and maybe the strangest and unexpected, is a divinatory literary interpretation of Dante Alighieri's Purgatorio in The Divine Comedy as a structured system of science shaped by geomantic cosmology. As you can imagine, some Italian scholars are slightly, disturbed when I showed this finding. So each component explores divination not only as religious practices, but as an epistemological and semiotic system. Collectively, the project situates Ifa and geomancy within a global history of symbolic interpretation, demonstrating the resilience and adaptability of divinatory knowledge across temporal, linguistic, and cultural boundaries. At the heart of both Ifa and geomancy lies a shared structural form, a limited set of figures or signs generated through a randomized process, which is later subjected to interpretation. In Ifa, there are 256 signs derived from binary combinations. They are produced using palm nuts or a divination chain, which is called okpele. In geomancy, there are 16 traditional figures created from marks or points made in sand or on paper, but the figures are the same. These signs are not arbitrary. They are generated with mathematical rigor, but their meaning is not fully stable. The interpretation relies on a trained reader who navigates mythological, ethical, and cosmological frameworks to derive meaning, be in medieval Europe or nowadays in Africa. What unites these systems is their semiotic logic. They produce meaning through patterned randomness and interpretive labor, situating the diviner as a mediator between the known and the unknowable. So, the system was born in Northern Africa, then went north to Europe. It went also Europe, I'm talking about the 12th century, 1140, that's the first manuscript we have. 1140, northern Spain. So it came from Northern Africa, Berbers, and Arabic-speaking people, which were not necessarily Arabs from Arabia, but they could know Arabic without being from Arabia, Eastern Arabia. So in Northern Africa, the system was created and it was spread. It was spread towards the north, towards the south, across Sahara, and it became probably around the 12th or 14th, between 12th and 14th century, we don't have dates precisely, part of Western African religions. Okay, so it was nurtured, fed by local mythologies in West Africa, by rituals. And so the system is extremely stable, but it's also able to frame, organize mythologies, rituals, liturgies, etc. Okay? All right. It also came to the east, to Madagascar, and also to Persia of the time, and even northern India. Nowadays, you have this kind of system, the same one, in Iran and Pakistan and northern India. Now, I'm describing the spread of geomancy in a very schematic way because we don't know if maybe it could have been created in Africa, in Western Africa, let's say in Black Africa. But we don't have any written traces, simply because there was no writing. But it's very possible that it was introduced to Northern Africa from West Africa and adopted by the Arabs in North Africa and then written in Arabic, transformed by local Islamic culture and Arabic culture. It's just that we don't have any evidence of that. But it's not impossible. And it's not also impossible, and it's very actually likely, that there were feedbacks, loops, which means that it could go first from the Arabic world, then go to the Latin European world, and then come back with elements of astrology, for instance, or with elements of European magic adopted by late Arabic writers. So diffusion is not unidimensional, okay? So it's not necessarily from one point A to another point B. It can also be from A to B to C to A and goes like that. It's not easy to figure out the way it is spreading, okay? So that's why you have this circle here, okay? All right, so this is a map of the circulation of Ilm al-Ramal, which means, I'm not pronouncing correctly the Arabic, but it means the signs of the sand, okay? The root is RML in Arabic, and it spread probably from Ramal. The author Skinner puts the word Ramal here. Maybe it's working, I don't know. Ramal, yeah, okay. Well, it doesn't work on the... Yeah, you see RAML? Okay, so that's where it's supposed to be. First, the historical evidence we have, that's Northern Africa. So it spread to West Africa, to the east, to Persia, and to a part to Northern India, and also went to Madagascar, the Sikidi, okay? But late, from the 16th century on, it also became part of the Americas, in Brazil and Cuba. In Cuba, it's still extremely popular, very well known and practiced in Cuba, totally embedded in Santeria. And from there, it spread all over the Americas. Venezuela, Colombia, the USA, of course, Florida, and also California. I did in the 90s some fieldwork in Glendale, in the suburbs of Los Angeles. I participated in a NIFA initiation in Glendale. So that I could tell you about that, but I'm going to be prudent about that. Okay, so those are the 16 figures, the Latin version of those 16 figures. Okay, and those 16 figures are produced randomly, putting dots on sand, on wax, Okay, so you can use wax on a table, on a kind of table. You spread wax on the table, and then thinking about a question. For instance, should I marry this person? If you're a man, you want to know if the person, your fiancé, will be a good wife. So you ask the question to the planets and the stars. And the planets and the stars answer through the mind and the hand of the geomancer. The geomancer is thinking about the question, and he puts dots on sand or on paper with ink, without counting those dots, but thinking about the question. And he doesn't count the dots, and then he has to stop. And you can check out if he checks out if the number of dots is even or odd. And then from there, he builds this here. This is one of them. Okay, so this is even, but this is odd, for instance. Okay, so you're canceling the dots you have, and finally you get one or two. Okay, and so you write that. You do that 16 times, and then you find 4 of the major, the first ones, the first figures, which are called the mother figures. Okay, all those figures have names. Those names, and as you can see, there are only 16 figures. It cannot be 17 or 15. It's just impossible. Okay, mathematically. That's why it's so resilient. That's why it spreads so well everywhere. Because the human mind, you Yoruba, French, Spanish in the 12th century, or Cuban in the 21st century, you can do that. It's just, let's say, a process that the human mind can do, whatever the culture and whatever the period. Okay? So they have names. That's the Latin names. The names are derived from the Arabic, actually, with variations. Okay? So this is the geomantic medieval system. So it's the art of points. That's a nice manuscript of the 13th century. It's the art of points arranged by lot from divine inspiration, which go through the stars and planets. And once you have those figures, you have to interpret them for the consultant. Okay, so if you find, for instance, the sign Puella, the girl, in the house of marriage, that's a good sign. So, yes, you should marry your fiancée. She's going to be a good wife. Okay? So this is the kind of interpretation they make. If you find the sign Amicio, which means the loss, in the same house, it's going to be a disaster. Don't do it. Don't marry that lady. No. Don't. You should take somebody else. Okay. So this is a manuscript of the Middle Ages. As you can see, they were a very nice piece of art, very, very wonderful piece of art. And the dots I'm talking about, the figures are on the margin here. Okay. And you have, this is Puella, for instance, exactly what I'm talking about. Puella here, and it's talking about love here, and it's a good one. And to be precise, they mention in this manuscript that it is supposed to be associated with the zodiac, the zodiac sign Libra. Libra is the balance. Do you say that in English? Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's a system very much linked to astrology in the Middle Ages and in the Arabic world. Okay, so that's the Yoruba version. You can see they are exactly the same figures. We're talking about Nigeria, southwest southwest Nigeria right now, Benin, Togo. But the system is mathematically, formally, it's the same. Okay, it's the same. The names are not the same, and the contents, the spiritual contents, the ritual contents, the mythological contents are different. Still, you can find, and I found the links between this system and the geomancy in the Middle Ages. So, what's the big difference between Ifa and geomancy? In Europe, it's really based on calculation and astrology. So you build when you're doing geomancy, you build a chart. I'm going to show this kind of chart. I'm going to show you how you work on geomancy, but it's at the end. All right. So this is typically a geomancy chart. Okay. So you find the first 4 ones randomly, thinking about the question, and then you generate mathematically. I won't enter in detail the other signs, which are 11 actually, doing combinations, and then you find the judge here. Okay. In West Africa, you don't do this kind of calculation. What you do is finding signs one after the other with this, a machine, a kind of random machine producing signs, but you don't do this kind of calculations. Okay? In geomancy, in Arabic and Latin geomancy, you only produce these 4 first signs. Okay? And it's heavily based on, as I said, on astrology. Okay, so all the signs are linked to the zodiac, the signs of the zodiac, and also to the planets, the 7 planets that were identified in the Middle Ages. Okay, so let's go back to Ifa. Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay. So in Africa, and the further you go from the Arabic world, the less calculation you have, and the more mythology you have. Okay, because in the Sahel, for instance, in Mali or the Islamic West Africa, you still have the system of the Arabs, which is used. But if you go more south to the coast, to Benin and Nigeria, almost all calculation has disappeared, but it's full of mythology. It's full of stories. It's full of symbolic elements which are linked to the local religion, to the local gods, to the local Vodun or Orisha. Okay, so you lose calculation, but you get a lot of content. You get a lot of mythological, narrative contents. You don't have narration in geomancy. Okay, it's very. They were very prudent. They didn't want to go against monotheism, so you don't relate. You don't mention other gods than Allah or Christ. Okay, so you just focus on interpretation of signs sent by God, not on spirits. Okay. So, in Benin, there's another thing, in Yoruba too. The other thing is that there is the power is in the signs. The power is in the signs. It's called Ashe. Okay, but the power comes with the signs when they are written, when they are marked on the trays that you can see here. So, for instance, if you use here this tray, you mark those signs, and once they are marked, you take the powder, and the powder is full of power. So it's not an abstract, intellectual, totally idealistic system. We're talking about something which is at the same time material and spiritual, because the haché is the power, is it's the efficiency of the sign, but it's based on materiality and also on signs which are written in the tray with prayers, incantations. And so what you are saying, chanting, what you are writing, and is making this powder, the haché, powerful. Okay? It's not part of European tradition at all. Okay? In European tradition, it's way more abstract and calculation, as I said. Okay? So, the element of method, I'm working when I'm doing doing this fieldwork, and in Africa and in Cuba, I'm working with the diviners actually, and because I was initiated in Cuba, they recognized, they accepted my initiation in Africa, so I'm part of the rituals, and we work with the people, and we share knowledge actually. Okay, so it's more than observation and participation. It's really, I would say, it's not observation and participation. It's participation and then observation. So it's the first thing is to be really involved and to know the system and to work on it. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how it works. Okay. So in the middle here, you have my dear friend Matthias Paki, is a master Babalao, and he's putting signs here. Signs on the left, signs on the right. When the sign on the left is stronger than the sign on the right, okay, he asks for the hand of, this is Vinyl, she's a consultant, and she has in her hand, let's say to be schematic, one hand says yes, the other hand says no. Okay, so there's a question. He finds a sign on the left or sign on the right. Which one, if the sign on the left here is stronger, he will ask her right hand. And she opens the hand, and if the token in the hand says yes, that means that the answer of the god is yes. Okay? Of course, if it's the contrary, if it says no, we go on and ask another question. For instance, does your problem comes from witchcraft? Yes or no? Does your problem comes from a taboo that you didn't respect? Yes or no? Etc. Does your problem comes from the ancestors? Yes or no? Etc. 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 And so, when the answer is yes, there's a secretary here who writes the result. So sometimes I do it myself, but in this case, of course, I was filming. So you're going to see. Excuse me. So, yeah. So he writes the signs. Here we have Otrupon Odi. That's the sign, the major sign of the consultation for this lady. And the main meaning of the sign would be problems, women's problem of the belly. Because the sign referred to several gods which have to do with the question of specific problems for women. And so it goes on until we find the final answer to the problem of the person. So that's the way it works. Okay? I don't know if it's done. Oh, yeah, okay. Can you see how it works? Yes. Look at that. He's manipulating palm nuts, and if he finds one, when he's hitting his hand like that, if there's one left, then he marks 2 on the tray. If there's 2 left, he marks 1 on the tray. It's the contrary of what he gets in his hands. Of course, you can't go in and take pictures like that. I've been there for almost 20 years now. So they not only allow me, but they encourage me to film that and to show it, actually, to my students and to you. So, okay. So this is the way it works. Now, something very interesting happened in the 1930s. A church was created based on those signs. What you just saw is a consultation of a specialist, a diviner, who is interpreting signs for one person. But in 1934, Oshiga, he was a Nigerian Yoruba from Lagos, he was a pastor in a Christian church. He decided to create a Church of Ifa, a church based on those signs, which became not only a process of consultation, but a full-fledged theology, liturgy, and church, organized with rules and regulations. So it was created in 1934, and it still goes on. So it's going on in Nigeria, it's going on in Benin, and my fieldwork in the last years was concentrating on this Church of Ifa. You're going to see, this is the book I published last year, and it's going to be translated. It's almost done, thanks to the Hutchins Center too. And so Olorunfunmi Adebanjo Oshiga was the creator, founder of this church. And what is incredible is that it never disappeared, even if they have only 1,000, 2,000 followers in southern Benin and southern Nigeria. So it's not a lot at all compared with other Pentecostal or evangelical churches, as you can, or even prophetic African churches. But it's still going on. It's just like if they were supported by the structure of those signs. Okay, so the incredible power of resistance of those signs is they are taking advantage of that, and it has not disappeared in 100 years, even if they are still small. Okay. To give you an example, in 26 of what they were doing and they are still doing. In 2016, when I was here, I was teaching at the Divinity School. I did a full semester teaching. I found the rules and regulation of this Ifa church here at the Library of Widener. So that's the magic of Harvard. I found the basic documents of this church. And so I translated them with the help of a translator there. And I have shown how, in this book, how they created a new ethics, a new African ethics based on 16 commandments. Why 16 commandments? Because there are 16 signs. So they created a new morality based on those signs. So there are 16 of those, 16 commandments, and you can see that they are very much linked to Christianity, because the structure, the institutional form of the Church of Ifa, of course, is Protestant and, to be precise, Anglican. So they used very much to create the book. They used the Book of Common Prayer, but of course transformed it, adapted it to Ifa, to geomancy. The one I like best, because it's probably not in the Bible, it's something that was really invented and original, is the 16th. The 16th is, you shall not deceive yourself. So look at the 10 Commandments, you won't find that. But I like it very much. And it's very common, actually, to deceive oneself. So it's based on, all of those commandments are based on myth related to the science. So Oshiga found the conjunction of African mythology and wisdom from the Bible, looking at all the possible connections. Sometimes it doesn't work, but he doesn't care. Why? Because he changed the myth. So, for instance, he has a myth, it doesn't correspond to what he wants, but he changes the myth to have it compatible with the morality of the church, of Christianity. So it's not as easy to have those two systems going together, but he did it. And so it's very interesting how to show how you create a church, how you create a new theology from different elements which are not necessarily compatible. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. For instance, something very compatible is you have to respect father and mother. That's very African. You have to respect the ancestors. You have to respect your mother, your father, everybody who's older than you. That's in the Bible too. So that's perfect. You can get it easily. Okay. Sometimes it's not so easy. For instance, you shall not worship the gods. So what do you do with that? Because the local culture is full of spirits. So the African gods become angels. So you don't, in the system, you don't worship gods, but you can worship angels, like, for instance, Eshu Legba, that I mentioned, becomes a kind of messenger of God. Okay? So you're not worshiping a god, you're worshiping, or you have reverence, you can say that maybe, respect to angels, lesser spirits, which actually were gods before colonization. Okay, so you'll be able, I hope, to read that books very soon. So this is a service, looking at the time. So they have pastors. Okay, the pastors are also babalaos. They are also diviners. They also have a private consultation during the week. But on Sundays, they have a service and they conduct the service for the congregation. Okay, it's a small church, never more than 30 or 40 people in each churches, in each temple. I mean, but there are like 20, 25 of those temples with 20, 30 people each Sunday going to service. Okay, the prophet Orunmila, who was the first of the diviners, has become a prophet in this institution, just as the gods were not anymore gods, but they are angels. Well, the Orunmila, the god of past, present, and future, or Orunmila, the god of wisdom and divination and destiny, has become a prophet. So they have the worship, they praise Orunmila, who was a god and became a prophet. Okay, which makes sense, of course. So I'm going to show you some images. They are very vivid, and this is the congregation going to the service. That was 2017, very close to Porto Novo, border of Nigeria. You can see the books. The books are so important because they are the symbol of their respectability in a modern society. Okay? So if you have a book, you're as respectable as Christians or Muslims because you have a book. Okay? Everybody dressed in white. because white is a way to avoid bad spirits. Okay, if you dress in white, the bad spirits, the witches won't attack you. A majority of practitioners are women. Okay, the congregation is really female. And the pastors are all men, so you have to know that. Babalaos are I don't know any woman diviner. They exist. They told me that there were some, but they are not at all common, and I don't know them. I don't know any of them. Okay. So the service is in Goun. Goun is the language of the people of Porto Novo, but sometimes in French too, when they have foreigners, when they have people from the north, when they have people from the west, coming from Togo, for instance, they don't know the language, they don't know Goun, so sometimes they do the service in French too. Okay, and in Nigeria, they do it in Yoruba and sometimes in English. All right. So that's a sermon. And look at that. All the signs I was talking about from geomancy, they are here. Okay. The full series of the 16 signs. The symbols that you have behind, one of them is the symbol of Islam here. Okay? But you can't see it, but on the other side there is a cross which represents Christianity. So in the middle you have the okpele, which is the collar, you can say that, how do you call that? The necklace that you use to produce those signs. And it's between Islam and Christianity. So they think themselves as a synthesis, a mediator between Christianity and Islam. And what is very interesting too is that it's exactly what happened in the Middle Ages, because geomancy was a link between Islam and Christianity in Spain. You had the system was common to Arabs and people in Western Europe, and it's still going on like that. They don't know it, but that's how it operates. That's how symbolically it's working as a mediator between civilizations and religion. That's how geomancy is working. So they have this paraphernalia. They are dressed like pastors in a Protestant church. See? Can you see? You see the cross now? Okay. All right. So it's a very long footage. Just want to show you some nice images here. All right. So there's dancing. There is praying. There is chanting, singing for Orunmila and for the Lord. Olofi, Olorun, Olodumare. Okay? All right. So if you're interested in have the full record of this ceremony, it's like 2 hours and a half. So, okay. Now, all right. So, when I was talking about, I mean, this is what is Ifa and Ifa Church. Now, in 2018. Master Babalao Aristide Falola gave a series of lectures to 3 professional diviners, Padonouk, Poffon, and Finagnon. And one of them, that's is in the picture, is a very, very friend of mine, and Yosvanis, actually. Yosvani knows him. He recorded the lectures in Goun, okay? So this gentleman, Aristide, gave these lectures for several months to them. Padonouk recorded it. I had a very long interview with Falola because I wanted to edit his teachings. And so we agreed to do an introduction, which would be a dialogue between him and myself, to kind of let's say sharing of knowledge. That would be the introduction. Unfortunately, Aristide Falola passed. He died in 2020. And so the project is right now very much advanced, and I've done like 160 pages of this edition. It's translated into French. So there's the Goun language, which was the original language. It's been translated to French, and I'm editing the French. And the third step would be English, because we want also to reach the English-speaking people in Nigeria especially. But it's not only the edition, I mean the linguistically edition. What I'm also doing is an international comparison based on his teachings. What I want to do, and what I'm doing, is each time is referring to a sign in notes, footnotes. I'm looking at Nigerian sources, Beninese sources, and Cuban sources to see if I can find the same elements in Nigeria, in Benin, and in Cuba. Sometimes it's working very well, and sometimes it's not. So that's a very interesting thing to do. So I have sources from Benin, classic in the first part of the 20th century, Mopuel, and Ajumumuni, who's a contemporary source. In Yoruba land, I use Bascom, I use Epega and Salami. And in Cuba, there is a very large encyclopedia of Ifa science, which is called the Odun de Ifa. Okay? And of course, I use my own fieldwork in Cuba in the 90s, and the book which was translated to Spanish in 2020 that you can have online for almost nothing. So it's called Dioses and Signos if you want to use it. So, so each sign is conveying myth, colors, references in what Falola is let's say, in his teachings. Okay, and I'm looking at the commonalities, what is common and what is different in different spaces and civilization. Well, actually, Nigeria, Benin, and Cuba. Okay. Sometimes the story that Falola is telling is not linked to the same sign, but is still there in Nigeria or in Cuba, but not related to the same sign, which is slightly disturbing because it's like if there was a blurring in the system. Okay. So I can't really enter into details because I want to talk a little more on the last thing, that is Dante. Okay. So there's a strong relationship between what this master Falola is teaching and Mopual ethnography, which was the 1940s in Benin, of course, because it's like what Mopual recorded was like the ancestor of what Falola is saying right now. Okay, there's a weak relationship between what he says and what I can find in Nigerian and Yoruba sources, which is slightly strange because they are very close. We're talking about 20 kilometers, not more, on each side of the border. Okay, and the strangest thing is that Cuban sources are close to what he says. Yeah, Cuban sources are close to what he says. Not because there's a direct link, but because Bernard Maupoil Ethnography, the book of 1943, has been imported in Cuba very early. And so Babalaos in Cuba, they read it, they used it, they translated it to Spanish. And the Tratado de Odun de Ifa is full of references to Maupoil and translated. So it's like a strange circulation, okay? It's not geographically the closest, which is the closest symbolically and narratively, okay? That's an interesting result. It's paradoxical, but it's explainable, okay? And of course, in Benin, they speak French. In Nigeria, they speak English. And Fon and Goon don't speak necessarily Yoruba, but they can read French, of course, okay? And Yoruba rarely speak or rarely speak French, and they rarely read French, okay? Okay. So, let's finish with Dante. Inspiration comes largely from Professor Gates' major book in 1989. And the book that you should read if you haven't read it is a really masterpiece on literary critics, because it's focusing on Eshu, the messenger god and trickster, seeing it as a generative principle which is at the core of black literature. Zora Neale Hurston, Richard Wright, with the idea that signs are polysemic and they can be used in a context of domination, exploitation, slavery, etc., Jim Crow laws, with a political use of those language, with using the full polyphony and polysemy of those words, and that's what Gates that's what it calls signifying. Okay. Now, the strangest thing is that, in a way, Dante is using the same system. Not, of course, in the same social environment. But still, when you read Umberto Eco and his commentary of the Commedia, you see that Dante is using polysemic symbols too. Okay? There was a scholar, an American scholar, Richard Kay, who showed very well that Dante used astrology in Paradise, which is the third canticle of the Divine Comedy. He used it heavily, okay? And so, in the 24th canto, the chapter, let's say, of Purgatorio, which is the center of the Divine Comedy, you know that there is hell, purgatory, and paradise, okay? So in the middle of Purgatorio, where the souls are cleaning themselves of their sins, okay, you find a reference to, this is the place exactly where he mentions, Dante mentions geomancy. Not only geomancy, but he mentions a sign which is Fortuna Major, Fortuna Major being a sign of geomancy, and also of Ifa, of course, as I said. Okay, so this is exactly in the where it appears in at the end of the Slothful. Okay, so there's an explicit mention of. No, okay, so let me check here. Yeah, so that's the explicit mention of in Canto 19. So it's Canto 19 of geomancy in Purgatorio. When geomancers can in the east see their Fortuna Major rising before the dawn along a path that will be darkened for it only briefly. And then there's a stammering woman, there's like a dream, and he sees a very bad woman. Actually, she's a siren, and she seduces men to eat them and kill them. Well, that's the story of the siren, of course, okay? So, but what I'm interested in is that exactly in the middle of Purgatorio, there is a mention of geomancy. Okay, so, all right. Dante defines himself as a producer of signs. There's a lot of commentaries on this quote here, but no sometimes they don't realize the strong meaning of significando, vo significando in Italian, which means I am producing signs. Okay? Sometimes the translation to English is just crazy. I mean, they don't translate that. They don't understand why he says I am making signs. And signs, inspired signs, that's what he says. Love inspires me, and I note, I write, and I am making signs. So it's not by chance that you have this kind of process in the Divine Comedy. He defines himself as a producer of signs. Okay? All right. So, what my hypothesis, and I've been working hard on that, is that the full Purgatorio is made of those shields, those tables. And he follows, I'm able now to show that he follows each sign one after the other in the full Purgatorio. He uses this system to build his narration. It's a diegetic machine that is using geomancy as a creator of signs and stories. So he follows those signs to create his own story. Okay? Conclusion. So, geomancy is a universal system of knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. That's what the Babalaos, the diviners, say right now in Cuba, in Nigeria, and in Benin. And it's exactly the same sentence that you find in the manuscripts of the 13th century and 14th century. It's expressed exactly the same way. Geomancy is the science of points to know the present, the future, and the past, okay? Using non-human entities. Stars, planets, in the Middle Ages, God, references to Allah also, but also, of course, in West Africa, the Orichas and the Vodun, who are talking through those signs. It's never monosemic. It has never one only meaning. When you're a diviner, you have the sign for the consultant, but you have to interpret it. And you have to have a kind of conversation with the person. So, for instance, there's the sign of Yekumei. Yekumei is the sign of the night, death, ancestors. So, you will ask, do you have somebody who was died recently in your surroundings and in your family? And if the person says yes, so this person is speaking right now in the conversation we have with the gods. So why? Because the sign is the sign of the ancestors. Okay. What's incredible is the continuity and structural permanence of those signs across cultures, civilizations, historical periods, religions again. It's like the human mind is able to use this structure of producing randomly signs to create stories. That's what you find in Dante. Stories, myth, beliefs, rituals. Okay? So it's always embedded in cultures and religion. That's the strength of the system, of course. Born in Africa, but spread all over the world. Okay, so Orisha and Vodun religion in Africa has fed Ifa contents. In Europe, in Dante's story, in the Divine Comedy, it's full of Christian references. It's supported by Christian theology. Geomancy is interpreted as a vector of morality. I can't enter in details, but that's how Dante uses it. He uses it with Christian theology. He uses the system with another religious content. Okay? Among the Yoruba, it's very well oriented towards poetry, versification. It's a kind of chant, when in Benin, it's way more narrative. They don't care so much about rhymes, verses, rhythm in the recitation of Ifa. What they like is the story, the narration, the story of Shango fighting Ogun, the god of thunder fighting the god of iron, etc., etc. So there are cultural differences even in Africa, of course. Okay. So thank you again for listening to me and this pretty, how can I say that, slightly dizzy voyage. It's been a very nice semester with you, with all the fellows and the team at the Hutchins Center, and thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Erwan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That was brilliant, my friend. Just brilliant. Thank you for the shout out. I appreciate that. My first question is, why do we know that the system started in North Africa and then went south? Why couldn't it have started in the south and gone north? I mean, our only evidence is the written record, right? So we have the first account in writing, but it doesn't necessarily prove the origin or the dissemination. And then the second question is, why do you think the Yoruba mythology religion has been so powerful? It is the one truly Pan-African religion. You know, other religions manifested themselves from Africa in the New World, but nothing like Yoruba-based religion, Ifa. And when you talked about the language differences between Dahomey, Benin, and Nigeria, that, you know, Ifa in Nigeria is Fa in Dahomey. So linguistically, they're very similar. But anyway, I'd love your thoughts.
All right. So first answer, you're absolutely right. I don't know if it's working. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. What we absolutely know, we know for sure, is that the first writing testimony we have is 1140. That's northern Spain, Hugo de Santalla, and he writes explicitly that he's translating from Arabic, and he gives Arabic names. So there is absolutely no doubt that the Latin geomancy comes from the Arabs or Berbers, because
they're different.
Yeah, and you could, in Spain especially, a lot of the Muslims were not Arabs, they were Berbers speaking Arabs, which is slightly different. So we know it comes from the Arabs, and because of this written testimony. Now, as I said, before we have Arabic written testimonies of the late 8th or 9th century. It's called the Picatrix. It was written like as a compilation of everything magic, and there is nothing about geomancy. So the introduction of geomancy is probably around the 11th or 10th century in the Arabic world. As you said perfectly well, maybe it was the Arabs who were at the same moment organizing the trans-Saharan slave trade could have perfectly taken that from West Africa. It's perfectly possible. And wrote it their own way. So we don't have anything precise except what I'm just talking about. And of course, it's only written material we have. The strangest thing also is the first manuscripts are not in Arabic. They are in Latin. So the first Arabic manuscripts we have are 100 years after Hugo de Santalla in Latin. So Hugo de Santalla says he's copying and translating from the Arabic, but we don't have the original. The original is lost. We don't have any of the original Arabic source for Hugo de Santaella in the 12th century, actually 1140. Okay. So second thing about the Yoruba. The Yoruba, if the Yoruba are so universal, it's because I'm going to say something very provocative, because they prefer the cult of the gods to the cult of the ancestors. Why? Because if you are following gods, you can share the god. You can't share your ancestors.
Right. You can't take your ancestors with you.
No. And so when you have gods, the gods, you can share them with your fellow Africans everywhere, especially in Cuba, Brazil, because the gods are not your ancestors. They are nature gods, they are social gods, they are universal gods, and of course they come from a special culture, the Yoruba. But the Yoruba had city states. They had Oyo, they had Ife, and they were spreading all over the region. And the gods were, even before the slave trade, were trans-ethnics. You have Shango in Benin. You have Babaluaye in Nigeria, but you have the equivalent Sokpona, Sakpata in Benin. And they are the same gods, because they were
exactly the same.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And so the Yoruba religion is universal because it's not linked to a lineage. It's linked. They created vast entities, universal entities. A pantheon, just like the Greek in a way. Just comparison only. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That is John Thornton's theory too, and it makes much better sense than the positivistic theory that the Yoruba arrived last, and therefore, that I think that's just simplistic. People take what is useful, and what is beautiful, and they refashion it. And there's something special about Yoruba cosmogony that's wonderful and poetic, and that's why literary critics like me responded to it so avidly. Anyway, thank you. This is brilliant. And what has been the response of Dante scholars?
Some hated it. I won't say the name, but a very, very prominent Dante scholar wrote to me, "I will never support never support your hypothesis." But some other people said it's just wonderful. You just discovered something absolutely unheard of for 700 years, and it's very how can I say that? Serious. I'm not a crazy person, as you can see, and so I have evidence. It's impossible to fight evidence, as you know. It's
Erwan, Erwan, we all know you. You're a little bit crazy. You're a little bit crazy. But Erwan, nobody reads the Purgatorio. Nobody reads the Paradiso. Everybody reads about hell, the Inferno.
Yeah, that's right.
So how did you stumble on this, if I may? I'm interested as a scholar.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not for 700 years, all the commentators comment this small passage, saying that it's just a way to give a date to the moment in the narration, okay? Because Dante says it's the moment when geomancers see in the sky Fortuna Major, which is a sign of geomancy. So everybody knows that. It's not a discovery. But they never took that seriously. When actually it's exactly in the middle of the full comedy. It's exactly in the middle. It's why somebody like Dante would mention a system of divination exactly in the middle of his travel. So they never took that seriously. So it's in the middle of the Purgatory, but it's also in the middle of the full system. Okay, so it's the other reason they didn't find out is that they didn't use the manuscript that I found in Vienna. In Vienna, there's a manuscript which vocabulary corresponds exactly to the Purgatorio. So the Dante scholars, academics in Italy, they can't say it's impossible while you're just saying bullshit, excuse me, because I have the manuscript. I can show them. just I can show them that the manuscript is corresponding, the vocabulary is corresponding to what Dante uses in the Purgatorio. So, I mean, there's a moment when evidence will, they will probably say, well, I can show it to you. So the book is finished, thanks to the Hutchins. So I've been doing those things too, yeah.
Congratulations. It's a major discovery, my friend. Okay, Krishna.
So, is it working? Okay. Merci, Erwan, for this dizzying account that shows us how those seemingly distinct systems of knowledge and divination actually share a common foundation that you sort of trace to perhaps not. We don't know if it's North Africa or somewhere else, but you've nevertheless given us a pretty, convincing account of the history. Now, if we think about West Africa, it's been, of course, a very fertile place for conversations and confrontations between different religions, Islam, Christianity, indigenous religions, if we want to call them that. Now, the Church of Ifa, of course, is perhaps, I didn't quite get a sense of how Christian it was to start with, and whether the Muslim iconography was more of a sort of gesturing to Islam. But it seems to me that if we look at all the different ways in which people in West Africa have created fabulous sort of new religions, even Chrislam, right? This merging of Christianity and Islam. Nevertheless, it seems to me, I mean, as an anthropologist of religion, but perhaps you disagree, that Christianity has been more malleable because perhaps they can house those gods you're talking about, whereas Islam, it's more complicated. I mean, of course, they can become jinn, but then what do you do with them? So I wonder if you can give us a sense of, in fact, how, and Nigeria and southern Benin, I think, are far more Christian than they're Muslim. So, of course, they make the case for Christianity. What about sort of reformist or Orthodox Islam? What has been the response from local religious Muslim leaders and specialists? That's my first question. And then I find it completely fascinating that Beninese and Yoruba people are not really talking to one another. Language seems to be an impediment, whereas Maupoil's translation, sent to Cuba, voila, the system works actually quite well. So distance is not an impediment. It's more language here. We're talking about translation, across century, but also just over the course of the past 50 years. But what is your sense or your experience of how those different specialists, what sense of themselves do they have of being part of this larger intellectual community?
Okay, so I'll begin with the second question.
Okay.
So there is a tension among Babalaos. Some say this is for Africans. So this is a system, Ifa is a system for black people, for Africans. It's a system that we own, we invented, that's for us. It was created in Ife in Nigeria, and we don't want other people to. It's a nationalistic perspective, and there is some people like that among the practitioners of Ifa, even among the pastors of the Church of Ifa. Now, the other tendency, the other polarity is universality. So we have a religion for everybody. we have a system of gods which is for everybody, humanity. Cuba, Brazil, and so some of them, of the Babalaos, agree to share with everybody, in particular with me, okay? But still, there is a tension, okay? So is this white man here to rob us, to steal what we have? And other people said, but yeah, let's give it to him, because he's going to talk about us at Harvard. So that's wonderful. And so I receive messages from my friends there, and they say, well, you're going to talk about me. Pastor Adedonji is so happy because I'm mentioning him here. He's the head of the Church of Ifa in Porto Novo, and you could see his image, his picture. So there's again like it's a conflict, a contradiction between a Pan-African nationalist orientation and something more spiritual and universal. So that's my first answer, okay? I don't have to choose, but of course, I wouldn't be here if there was not this tendency to universality, of course. Second question, Islam and Christianity in the region. So the Church of Ifa has an institutional shape which is Christian. And to be precise, it's Anglican. So the form, the shape is institutionally is Christianity, and a very special kind of Christianity, which is the Anglicans. Okay. Islam is on the side, and you don't have so much in the region on the border of Nigeria and Benin. You don't have so much Islamic radicality. Okay. It's an African Islam. It's very it's accommodation. Okay, accommodation with everything. Ancestors, Ifa. I know people. I'm spending my time in the consultation cabinet, so I see all those people coming, and half of them are Muslims. So they are Muslims. When they are Muslims, the Babalao usually avoid saying that there are gods speaking in the signs, but they still have to do sacrifice. To do the rituals, the sacrifice. What I didn't enter, I cannot enter in details. But when you do a consultation there, you will have a sacrifice to do, offerings and animal sacrifice, chicken, goat, whatever, okay, sheep. Okay, so you have to do that. If you don't do that, the divination is empty. Divination is a way to solve your problems, but you don't solve your problems by only knowledge. You solve your problems when you're doing the ritual. You're doing the ritual, and the ritual is something you have to give to ancestors, gods, witches. If you want to get rid of witches, don't fight the witches. No, don't fight the witches. It's useless. No, you don't do that. You give them something to eat, so they won't eat you. So that's the way it works. Okay. So divination is not fate. It's not something that you can't fight, that you can't change at all. It's not like that. Divination is something that will give you an advice, a piece of advice, and then you will act accordingly. But there is also a saying which says, if you don't have the money, don't go to the diviner. Okay? Because if you don't have the money, the consultation won't cost you anything, almost, like $1. Okay? The problem is that the consultation will say, okay, so now you know your problem. We have we know what the question is about, the issue that, and we know what it comes from, where it comes from, and how you will solve it. You will solve it with 2 chickens and a sheep, and it's going to cost you $50. So the consultation is $1, but the solution is $50. So if you only have $1, don't go to the diviner. Don't do it, because it's worse, finally. You don't have the money, you know the solution,
but you can't pay for the solution. So never go. So that's a very important saying. Another saying is, a babalao, a diviner, will never starve. Never. Because he will always have something to eat because of the sacrifice. Because the chicken, okay, the chicken will be cooked and eaten. Okay, so the babalao will never starve. It's impossible. So it's a practice, and it could look very much like extraction and some kind of, but that's the way it is and has always been. Maupoil said, for instance, Bernard Maupoil, 1943, said it was Ifa rituals were incredibly expensive already at the time. So they are very expensive. In Cuba, an initiation to be Babalao could be 25,000. Yeah, Cuba or maybe also in Florida. Okay, so money is something very important, and I think I answered your question. Okay.
Prof, thank you for the lecture. I have maybe a comparative data point and then a real question. The comparative data point is that I spent some time actually with Ijo Rumila in Nigeria. I'm an ethnomusicologist.
Wow.
I was very interested in their music. They have a hymnal
In Lagos?
and everything.
No,
in a couple
Ibadan?
in Ogun State and in Ibadan, and actually in Ife also. There's another one.
Yeah.
And I was really...
Just a second. My fieldwork was at the border of Nigeria, and I got information. I met people from there, but I've not done fieldwork there. Okay?
Oh, wonderful. One of the things that struck me was the degree to which people were not very interested in Christianity or Christian imagery. I would ask Babalaos that I knew as sort of professional practicing traditionalist Babalaos about their opinion of the Oshiga church, expecting for them to be like, oh, they're messing everything up and they're making us look bad or whatever, or they're, and actually it turned out that most of those Babalaos were actually deacons within that church, not because they had a particular affinity for Christianity, but rather because they were concerned about people from the other religious traditions, from Islam and Christianity, because they have services, public services on the weekend that in particular women and children go to. They're concerned about having their worshipers taken away. So I went to a prayer night. There was a child beauty pageant. There was sort of everything you would have at a prayer night at a Christian church. But in general, the liturgy was very much around specifically Ifa and Oromila rather than Christian imagery. Okay. So I'd be curious to sort of compare notes or see if there's national differences or if there are flexibilities actually within this organized church itself. But the question I wanted to ask you was about the differences between the way that the signs are derived in geomancy and in other systems. So as you showed us.
What's your question? Excuse me?
About the way in which the signs are derived. The signs, the Oduifa or the geomancy signs. Okay. So that the geomancy signs, you said, are made from sort of the random application of ink or wax in particular places. While in West African practice, it's through the manipulation of the palm nuts, and if there's two left, then it's one line, et cetera, et cetera. Are there ways in which those ways of deriving the signs can be understood in different places? Like, is there a way to sort of track the history through the ways in which the signs themselves are derived? I'm really struck by how different they are.
Okay.
Thanks.
So the answer is the following. In the Middle Ages, from the 12th century, so from Hugo de Santalla, and all those writers, Gerardo da Cremona, who's another translator from the Arabic, they were all translating science. Mathematical treatises, astronomical manuscripts from the Arabic. And so geomancy was part of it. They believed that geomancy was a kind of science. Not magic, not witchcraft, not even religion. It was a way to reveal the influence of the stars and the planets on our behavior as human beings in society. Just a kind of weather forecast. So tomorrow it's going to rain. because we have signs that we can interpret that tomorrow is going to rain. Okay, so you know it's going to rain tomorrow. If you want to go out, take an umbrella, or stay at home, or go out without an umbrella, that's your point, that's your problem. Okay? So geomancy is saying tomorrow there's going to be trouble in the street because this is the sign I'm finding. You're asking me if you should travel tomorrow? There will be trouble in the street because the figures of geomancy say that there will be trouble. People fighting because the sign of puer, belliger, is here. So the first thing I can tell you is tomorrow, if you want to go out, you go out, but take a weapon with you. Or go out with bodyguards. If you have to travel, do business, or you stay at home and wait like 1 week. That's your problem. So that's the way they thought about it. Like a science forecast. It's not at all what you have in Africa. In Africa, it's embedded in a system of offerings and sacrifice. Okay? The gods have agency. In the in geomancy, in the Middle Ages, zero agency. No, there's no more agency than the clouds that are coming and there will be rain tomorrow. There's no agency. It's just a physical process. That's all. It's the same in the geomancy of the Middle Ages. There's no agency. The planets, the stars, they are not people. They are not gods. They are not spirits. They are excuse me. They are inferences, natural inferences, driven by God, of course, but they are not conscious. Okay? In Africa, West Africa, Cuba, everything is about spirits and the way they influence you and how you influence them, how you can change their opinion on you, how they can maybe be nicer to you if you have a problem. Okay, so you give offerings to Legba, Eshu, and so it will solve your problem. In geomancy, there is nothing like that. There's no offerings. There's nothing like that. It's just knowing about a kind of a cosmological state of the universe where you are in. Okay, so there will be. That's a huge, major difference. Okay, so that's why calculation became something unimportant in Africa. Because if you have agency, you don't care about calculation. If you know that the gods and the spirits can act, can behave in your favor, you don't care about calculation. You don't have to look at all those houses, astrological houses, planets. No. What you want is a direct relationship with those spirits and how they can protect you, help you, how you can avoid the bad influences, etc. Well, so that's my answer.
Well, thank you very much for such an illuminating presentation. I wanted to ask if you could share some of your finding, especially the narrative corresponding with geomancy and what then Dante gave us in Purgatory. I mean, in terms of the story. And then also I want to hear from you, what do you think about is there a possibility that the geomancy returns in terms of popularity, or how do you see it?
Okay, so second answer first. Actually, there was a reintroduction of geomancy in the 20th century. With Aleister Crowley. Some of you know Aleister Crowley. He was very much influential in the 30s and 40s in Britain because he wanted to have witchcraft, a kind of new witchcraft. He was very much influential in the 60s on some rock and roll bands like the Beatles. Look at the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You will see Aleister Crowley face. And so Aleister Crowley was so popular. Led Zeppelin also, for instance, used him. He published a book of geomancy. the Golden Dawn geomancy, and he believed that it was the best way to get in touch with the demons. So it's another way of course, using geomancy in the 20th century in Britain. So that's my first answer. Today, could we have a coming back of geomancy? Maybe after people will have watched this lecture, they will create a new church of geomancy in Cambridge. I don't know. Yes. Dante. Okay. So, just one thing. When Dante enters the Purgatorio, okay, he meets a bearded man. Bearded, somebody with a beard, okay? It's Cato de Utica. He was a philosopher of the time of Caesar, okay? And his main characteristic is that he's full of hair, okay? He has a very, very long beard like that, okay? Then he speaks and he says, you're coming from the prison of hell. Third verse, he says, and apparently you're not damnatus, you're not damned. Okay? So those three, barbatus, prison, and damnatus, they are the three figures of Saturn, one after the other. Saturn being, as you know, the planet of sadness, but also of prison and this kind of things. So in the text, one after the other, when you look very carefully at the text, you find references to the names of those figures of geomancy. But of course, you had to figure out that, to find it, you had to have the Bartolomeo de Parma manuscript that I found in Vienna. Okay? So it's just one example, but I have like 20 of those, one after the other. So, and it's, I mean, you can give another interpretation, but mine is the most simple. He just used geomancy, as he said, because he mentions it. He doesn't mention Kabbalah. He doesn't mention astrology. The word astrology never appears in the Commedia, not one time. The only system he mentions is geomancy.
Erwan, thank you very much for your presentation. I can see what you were putting all those late nights in there. We're neighbors in the hall, so boys, we
almost sleep there.
Yeah, well, and I do. So I think you may have answered this question or most of it. I was thinking of the fact that Christianity has had to deal with what it might perceive as encroachments from science, from formal science declaring that many of the provinces of God were not of God, but were just parts of nature. And I was wondering to what degree Ifa has had to deal with the same or does the same, whether it be modern cosmogony or even new theories about randomness. I was wondering to what degree that has encroached on it. That's the first of two questions.
Okay, so the question of randomness is problematic because, as anthropologists or from outside, we believe it's random. Okay, but they don't believe it's random at all. It's just that they don't control it, but it's not random because there's somebody, a spirit, who's sending you the messages. So it's not like a random or how do you say, hazard? No, hazard is not a good word, but random. It's not thought as random. It's at all. It's not thought at random. It's not thought at random in geomancy. It's not thought as random in Ifa. The difference, again, is that in geomancy, it's not random. It's an image of the stars and the planets that will show up in the sand, that will show up in the paper where you put those dots. So it's a kind of it's a kind of science in geomancy, because it is an image of the cosmos, like if you had I don't know glasses to look at the skies. But they say, well, as we cannot figure out where are the stars and it's too complicated, we're going to do that because there's a link between those stars, those planets, your body, your mind, and your hand. So that's the way it is. It's a kind of science. They think it's a science.
I guess what I'm asking, though, is if you're a practitioner and you've left the farm and you're now working as a banker in Zurich and driving your Mercedes around, are you still believing these things, or do you tend to leave those beliefs and ideas behind you? Or if you're an Ifa mathematician or an Ifa astronomer.
I've been solicited by people not in Zurich, but in bank for giving advices. And so the funny thing is that I know they don't change their mind. What they change is the way they put it. When they have to give a speech, they use some of the elements of geomancy. Nobody knows it. But they think it's going to have a good effect on what they're saying. That's a strange thing to say. I will give you more examples. Privately.
Thank you. And I guess the last thing is, did the professor who told you that he would never support your theory regarding Dante, did he say why?
Yes, absolutely. They think that I'm trying to debunk, you can say that, or to find the only key to Dante, as if I was trying to find the good and only interpretation of Dante, which is absolutely not what I'm doing. What I'm pretending is that Dante used geomancy as a scenario, as a plot for narration. But when you have a scenario, you don't have the movie. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Erwan, that was just marvelous. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I found it riveting, and I want to say two things. But first of all, everyone, give it up for Erwan, please, for a marvelous presentation. That was great, my brother. And secondly, we all know why the Du Bois Institute is such a special place, and why you're either semester or year as a fellow at our wonderful research center has been so marvelous. And that is because of Dr. Christian Lewis. Please, everybody, I want you to stand up and give it up for the great Christian Lewis. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, I think it's Indian food time, right, Christian?
Yeah, we're waiting for you to say let's eat.
Thank you for this beautiful presentation. I have two questions. The first one is, I would like to know if there is any link between the practices in geomancy and those in Vodou. And the second question is, in your research, did you find some people's story showing that the geomancy really work?
Okay, so first answer, yes, there is a link between geomancy and Vodou in Benin. I'm not talking about Haiti, Bertoni, okay? So in Haiti, there's no sign of Ifa or geomancy. I'm talking about Haiti. But in Benin, yes. Yes, absolutely. The signs are linked to spirits, gods, the Vodun. Okay, Ogunda Mei, for instance, is a sign of the god of iron, metal, the forge. You can say that in English, I think. Everything related to steel. Okay, so yes, absolutely. Ifa, geomancy, Yoruba style is completely embedded in Vodun Orisha. Totally. Okay? Second, they really believe it works. It's working, and I mean, the practitioners and the people who are going to consult them, yes, of course, they think it's working, and they think they are doing a good job for the people. Yes, absolutely. They are not crooks, to say it in another way. They are not deceiving people to make money. No, they can make money. That's another issue. But they make money helping people. If you're a psychologist, you make a living doing psychology. Okay, so it's the same with divination. So they're making money. They're helping people. They do the sacrifice animals for the gods, and everybody thinks it's working. Or you don't go. I mean, that's all.
Do you have any story, example of story showing that? If you don't have, that's okay.
Well, it's just I don't think believing faith is based on experience like science. I mean, it's not like this. Even if something is not working, or I mean, for instance, you're sick, you go to the diviner, he says you have to do some and you don't really it doesn't work because you're still sick. You did the sacrifice, it didn't work. And that doesn't mean that they won't believe in it anymore. It's just that they think that they will say, well, the gods, we gave everything we could, but it didn't work, and the gods didn't agree with that. We tried what we could, and that doesn't mean that the gods don't exist. So efficiency, proof, evidence, it's something that is not a part of religion in itself. Even if they say, it's working, and I know it's working, but actually we are not on the same plan when we're talking about religion and magic.
Thank you so much.
So before we disband all, Martha and I, fellows here at the Hutchins, wanted to acknowledge all the fellows' gratitude towards the people who are making this possible. As you know, those who signed the card for Professor Gates, we gave it to him yesterday because, of course, he was leaving for Arizona. But now we want to acknowledge everyone else who has made our lives so pleasant and even possible here. So I guess we'll start with Krishna. Which we will give later, and for Sandra, and for Sean. Oh, that's Sean. Okay, please. Here. And we have a card for Del, Sheldon, Tom, and Justin. Justin was here too, right? No. Okay. Anyway. So thank you to everyone who signed the cards, and those who couldn't make it, we signed for them, and so they're still, they're on the paper. Yeah.
And thank you to all the fellows for everything. You are wonderful.
Yes. And thank you for the contributions. There will be a card also for the two custodians who, some of us who's work hard late at night. We have conversation with those people. We know them very well, and they are also delightful and part of Hutchins. So.